Says down there on the left, it started streaming less than a minute ago.
Yeah. How do I get this screen? Cody, do you know how to get this? Where is this screen? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to do? I'm trying to get the. Tell me what you're trying to do. I'm trying to find the. There we go. Okay. So is it 7 o'clock? We're going to broadcast. Yep. Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
All right.
Just make sure. That's our
Pastor.
Hey, y'all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, let's get started. Before we call the meeting to order, we'll ask Council Member Rob Usher to lead us in the pledge. We have Mr. Al McMillan from First Baptist Church who will give us a prayer.
I pledge allegiance to the
Hey,
flag
y'all, can you hear
of the
me?
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And yes, we can hear you, Colin.
Mr. McMillan?
Yes, sir. Let us pray. Father, we come tonight to seek your face. We are a wounded nation. Many are hurting because of lost loved ones. Many are hurting because of lost jobs. And God, we know that you have a purpose in all of this. And tonight, Lord, we ask that you would heal our city, our state, and our nation. God, would you use these precious city council, the mayor, the residents of Woodstock, Father, to further your cause and the cause that you call them to be about, Lord, and that's watching over these precious souls. So God, we rejoice in who you are. We know that you've got a plan, and God, would all of us, as we walk out that plan, God, would we bring glory and praise to your name. And we ask it tonight in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you both. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Woodstock to order for Monday, June 15th, 2020. Before we get started with the announcements, as a reminder, there's no public comment tonight because of the virtual meeting. Outside of the previously advertised public comment period for the public meeting, no public comment will resume as normal at our next City Council meeting on July 13th.
Thanks, Mayor. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. The announcements for June 15, 2020. Greenstock Day Recycling and Shred Event on June 20th at Woodstock Elementary and Citywide Yard Sale is June 19th through June 21st. Sign up at www.woodstockparksandrec.com. There is no Friday Night Live in July. The 6/22/20 City Council meeting is canceled. The next meeting is July 13th. City offices will be closed July 3rd in observance of July 4th. Due to COVID-19, the Freedom Run has been postponed until fall 2020. New date to be announced in the near future. The July 4th Spectacular Parade and Festival will not be held this year, but the fireworks in the area of Woodstock Square will continue as planned at dusk. And that does it.
Thank you, sir. Item 3-1 is a presentation by Dr. Steve Sampson, a licensed psychologist. Chief Moss, do you need to do an introduction for us? Go ahead, sir.
I'll be happy to do that. Hopefully Dr. Sampson is with us. Mayor, council members, as you may know, Dr. Steve Sampson has done psychological interviews and psychological screening for our applicants for quite some time. He's been in the business for better than 30 years and is really quite an expert in this arena. You may recall that we're working with him currently in the administration of a potential new exam for potential police officer applicants and to validate a new exam. And Doc is hopefully is positioned to be able to update you on our current practice as well as some areas that he's looking into and some discussion about the implicit bias or implicit association test. Dr. Sampson?
Says Dr. Sampson's on, but oh, Dr. Sampson, if you can hear me, put your audio on, please. I think in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and move forward. If he gets it to operate, we can always come back to him. Item 4 is consent agenda, items 1 through 4. Does any council member wish to pull any agenda item to consider separately? Having heard none, I'll need a
I believe that we needed to pull one of them, didn't we?
Yes, if you could pull 4-3 so we could discuss the Rhonda's email that she sent you, please.
right. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I'd like to pull item 4, or make a motion to pull item 4.3.
Second.
We have a motion and a David second.
Yeah, Donnie.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Ward 1. Ward 2.
Agree.
3.
Aye.
4.
Aye.
5.
Aye.
6.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 6-0. Going back to the consent agenda items 1, 2, and 4. I'll need a motion.
You have a motion to approve consent agenda items 1, 2, and 4.
Second.
Did I hear Warren?
David or Tracy, I believe.
Okay, David then. I know I heard you too. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, I'm sorry, excuse me. Roll call, Ward 1. Aye. 2. 3.
Aye.
4.
Aye.
5.
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Going back to item 4-3, it's the second reading ordinance to amend chapter 1, general provisions, section 1-7. Rhonda?
Hi, yes.
Rhonda, you there?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I was trying to do it from my phone. It was causing an echo. I wanted to let you know, I sent you an email earlier today that I forgot to put or both in the body of the ordinance amendment to match and mirror the charter. So that's the only addition, is to add that it'll be $1,000 fine, up to $1,000 fine, 6 months incarceration, or both.
All right, question for Eldon. Is it okay if we go ahead with the second reading and approve without having to have a third reading?
No, I think we need on this one to have a third reading also.
Rhonda said in her email to you today that it would necessitate a third reading at your first meeting in July.
Yeah, just making sure.
Because this is certainly something that could be challenged.
Okay. All right, any questions for Rhonda? If not, this will be the second reading with the third reading coming up in July.
Thank you.
More information.
Approve.
Second.
And David, second.
Yes, Donnie, yep.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Ward 1. Aye. 2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Item 5-1 is a public hearing and second reading for the fiscal year 2021 annual operating budget and ordinance. I'll turn it over to Crystal.
Good evening. This is the second reading. And if you will move to the next slide, please. So there are no changes since the last reading. All funds are balanced. There is no water rate increase, no stormwater rate increase either. Next slide, please. As discussed in the first reading, we are requesting or suggesting a change in title for the Recreation Operations Manager to Recreation Operations Manager, formerly the Amphitheater Operations Manager. This is strictly a position title reclassification, no compensation change. Next slide, please. So there were several suggestions or assumptions that were made in this fiscal year 2021. Those being listed here just to highlight them. I know we've seen them a few times already. This is the first full year of the phase 1 comp study. We have no compensation adjustments, so no phase 2, no cost of living, no new personnel, no salary adjustments to current personnel. We have reduced overtime line items. We've also recommended no out-of-state travel. We've seen increases in both the health insurance and the GMEMS pension contribution. We are not recommending any use of reserves in the general fund, but we will be recommending reserves to be used for capital projects in water, sewer, and stormwater funds. Next slide, please. We've moved 2 positions out of general fund, the Public Works Assistant City Manager and the Project Coordinator, the first being moved to Water and Sewer Fund, the second being moved to Stormwater. All current vacancies are being proposed to be frozen and unfunded, and they are listed here. Next slide, please. So each year we always have budget ordinance provisions. The first 4 bullet points are those that we've seen in prior years. The last bullet point is new for fiscal year 2021. Again, that's no out-of-state travel, no for conferences or training. And we also want to encourage the use of compensation time rather than overtime. Next slide, please. This is just a highlight of the fund categories, big 3, special revenue and internal service. Next slide. And then a listing of the funds that are in each of those categories. Next slide. Oh, we start off showing you the history. This is the millage rate history, just a visual representation of that. On the far right is the 2021 budgeted millage rate of 6.554. Next slide, please. Also, the debt balance history since fiscal year 2012, percentage of decrease in our debt balance would be 43.61% at the end of fiscal year 21 as proposed. Next slide, please. And then the general fund unassigned fund balance history, fiscal year 19 ended at 6.1 million. It's estimated that as of June 30th for the current year fiscal year 2020, that the unassigned fund balance will be 6.7 million. Next slide, please. So looking more specifically at the fiscal year 2021 budget. Overview is citywide a $45.5 million budget. This is net of the debt service, health insurance, dental, and workers' comp funds. The general fund makes up almost half of the citywide budget at 48%, and stormwater makes up 3%, and water sewer is about 26%. Next slide, please. So starting in the big three with the general fund, fiscal year 2021 proposed is $22 million. It's about a $441,000 decrease, or about 2%. Next slide. High level, looking at general fund revenues, these are the categories of our operating revenues. The taxes category, which is our property taxes, motor vehicle taxes, and tangible, things of that nature, is about 56% of our revenue. 16% is licenses, those are our occupational license, our business licenses. So again, just a high level overview of the general fund revenue categories. Next slide, please. And very similar, this is a high level overview of the general fund expenditures by department. On the far left, we have police, fire, public works, and parks and recreation. And those four departments make up about 77% of the general fund expenditures for fiscal year 2021. Next slide, please. So in the general fund, recurring revenues are projected to be down 2%. The net property tax digest is anticipated to be up 2% after appeals and after exemptions. And again, we have budgeted the millage rate at the current rate of 6.554. However, we've utilized a 97.5% collection rate as we anticipate collections to be less than what it has been in the past at this point in time. Next slide, please. We've proposed to continue forward with council contingency, benefit contingency, and operating contingencies, as well as included the library contribution at $20,000 and economic development contribution at $20,000 as well. We've included the transfer to the multiple grant fund of $143,000, and we'll talk about the details of that when we get to the grant. To the general transfer to the debt service by $242,000. This is only something that we can do this year. It's not something we'll be able to do every year. And we're able to do that by using reserves in the debt service fund that have been made available specifically for this use. Again, that's for the general fund transfer to debt service. Next slide, please. We've reduced operating budgets to the fiscal year 20 level or even below that in some cases. We have no out-of-town retreat as well as no GMA convention. We really try to match the expenses to the projected revenues for fiscal year 21. There is no general fund capital, no use of reserves, no new personnel, and again, no salary adjustments to current personnel. Next slide. So moving on to the water and sewer fund, fiscal year 2021 is proposed at $11.8 million. That's a $783,000 decrease, or about 6%. There is no water rate increase. There's no new debt for water sewer. There is an increase in the cost allocation to the general fund, and we are proposing to use reserves or tap fees for projects. There's no new personnel and no salary adjustments in water sewer either. Next slide, please. So the capital breakdown for water sewer is between the wastewater treatment plant and water sewer department or sewer mains. For water sewer, wastewater treatment plant, we've got some equipment and replacement of some systems. And then in our sewer mains department, we have several projects, including Ridgerock Water Main, Mueller pressure monitoring, Weatherstone, two projects for Weatherstone there. Next slide, please. And then rounding out the big three is stormwater. Stormwater for fiscal year 21 is proposed at $1.5 million. This is an increase of $132,000. There is no stormwater rate increase. We've had a slight increase in the cost allocation to the general fund. We are proposing to use reserves for projects for stormwater. There's no new personnel and no salary adjustments to the current personnel. Next slide, please. So looking at the capital for stormwater, it's $518,000, and that is several projects we have listed here. I won't go through all of them, but the one I will point out is that first one, the Rote Mill Road improvements. That project is split 50-50 between stormwater and the tax allocation district. Next slide, please. Moving on to special revenues. for fiscal year 2021 is proposed at 10.1 million, an increase of 757,000. The funds that are listed here are those that we will be going through in a little bit more depth. Next slide, please. Starting in the TAD, or Tax Allocation District, we have several projects for Rope Mill Road as listed here. That second bullet point down, I will point out, is the project I just mentioned that is split between stormwater and between the Tax Allocation District. We have resurfacing on Rope Mill. We'll have the Streetscapes 3, as well as some improvements for Hubbard Road and Bentley Parkway, which are both projects creating turn lanes in those roadway areas. Next slide, please. In the multiple grant fund, we have 2 grants, the New Day Creek Trail Extension, which will include design, right-of-way acquisition, and utility acquisition, as well as the Atlanta Regional Commission, or ARC, Town Center and Highway 92 LCI area update. And that is $175,000 for those updates in that project. Next slide, please. In the impact fee fund, we have the commitment, or the remaining portion of the commitment to the Elm Street for Reeves House, as well as about $12,000 for undesignated projects. Next slide. And in green prints, we have 2 projects at Dupree Park, the first being some drinking water fountains and some bike ramps, as well as some funding for undesignated projects. Next slide. In the Capital Projects Fund, this is a new fund for this year. It's very similar to the Capital Equipment Fund, of which you may have seen last year or in prior years. This is just specifically for projects. The first project we have in there is the Nice Road project, and the phase 1 will be construction. We're anticipating an intergovernmental agreement with Cherokee County, and their portion of the construction would be $2 million. Next slide. So this is an overview of the SPLOST $4 breakdown. This is just SPLOST 4 for fiscal year 21. Next slide. Going into a little more detail about what that breakdown is Public Works in our streets division. This will include 2 resurfacing projects, and both of these projects, the Arnold Mill Road and Barnes Road projects, are in conjunction with Cherokee County, and these are the portions that the city will be responsible for. The Barnes Road, I will mention, that has a slight split between SPLOST 4 and SPLOST 5. In transmissions for Public Works, we have the water well exploration and construction, as well as in Parks and Recreation, the finishing portions of the downtown playground engineering contract. Next slide. And I will mention that should finish out SPLOST 4, that should close out in fiscal year 21. In SPLOST 5, again, this is just an overview, high-level overview of the dollar breakdown for fiscal year 21. This is our 3rd year, or will be our 3rd year of SPLOST 5. Next slide, please. We have several projects for our Public Works Streets division. Road resurfacing projects, we'll be using the LMIG grant match grant, and then the city will have matching portion for a total project of $407,000. We'll do some survey database with Nice Road, as well as the pedestrian project for Highway 92. That is also grant related. And we'll also continue on with the HUD transformation project at Town Lake Parkway and Mill Street. This is for phase 2 preliminary engineering in fiscal year 21. And this will be a multi-phase project. It will cross multiple fiscal years, and it will have multiple funding throughout the life of that project. For fiscal year 21, it will be strictly SPLOST 5. Next slide, please. Continuing on with streets, we've got the long-term plan for Nice Road, which will include planning and concept design work. There's that other small portion of Barnes Road resurfacing that I mentioned previously, and then some replacement here for a truck and some mowers. Next slide. In Parks and Recreation, they have included here a replacement vehicle, as well as some new equipment, being the 2 types of mowers. And in information technology, we're going to be replacing some remote site switches. We'll have the mobile management device solution and the 2nd year of the 800 megahertz radio system. Next slide. Next slide, please. Police Department included for SPLOST 5 is 8 vehicles, broken down as you see here. And for our fire department, it would be replacing turnout gear. The remaining portion of SPOS 5, which is 1.8 million, will be for undesignated projects that we can come back to council for approval, and those will be considered budgeted reserves for fiscal year 21. Next slide. It says items for discussion. It's really just reminders and that the millage rate gets adopted in August. This budget has been based on 6.554 mills. The digest timeline, the assessments were sent out in May by the county. The appeal period will end on June 25th, and then we typically receive the digest in July. Next slide. I always like to include examples at the millage rate that has been budgeted of what a property tax bill could look like at these house values. Next slide, please. And that's it. That's all I have. Everybody took a lot of time in, so I always appreciate that. And thank you for your time. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions for Crystal? All right, having heard none, I'll entertain a motion. This is second reading.
Motion to approve.
Second.
That was a David motion and a Colin second, I believe.
Yes, sir.
All right, any further discussion?
This is a public hearing, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Thank you. I'd like to open up the public hearing portion of this agenda item.
Mayor, no one signed up to speak.
We'll close the public hearing and we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Ward 1.
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. I understand Dr. Sampson is on the line. Did you get your audio working there, Doctor?
Through my phone. Can you hear?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Basically, it says I'm unneeded. I don't know what happened just now, but you can hear me. Yes, sir. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Cal, are you there? Hello?
Al's in the chambers. He'd have to get to the microphone.
That's okay. We can talk. Let me explain to you what Calvin wanted me to talk about, if that's okay with you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm a psychologist. He sent you a bio sketch of my background. I've been around psychology about 50 years. And there was a bio sketch of my background also, and I sent the handout. You have to fool with that about bias. But he wanted me to talk primarily about a new psych exam that I'm building. And Woodstock's one of the agencies participating in the validation of it. I've got 22 agencies, yours being one of them. And it's a test that's going to measure some aspects of police screening that haven't been measured in the past. The current test measures intelligence, personality traits, and measures mental stability. But I've always felt over my 50 years of being around law enforcement, the two biggest problems were social judgment issues and character. So the new test that I'm developing is to measure social judgment and emotional judgment in social situations, as well as character issues that in law enforcement are critical. And as I said, Woodstock has participated. I was there approximately a week ago, and approximately 15 of your officers took part in the validation of it. And I probably want to get up to 400 around statewide. As I've said, the more I have, the better the validation study. And basically that's it. He also wanted me to talk about bias because everything you're seeing going on. I don't know if you had access to the handout I sent. If you didn't, don't worry about that. But one of the issues he wanted me to present in the test was the concept of measuring bias. In this case, a racial bias. In the character exam, I have it in there. I'm measuring stuff like empathy levels and ultra socialness and conscientiousness. But I'm going to probably put some what I call racial profiling questions in to see if people are biased in their perceptions of others. And I'm going to add that to the new test based on what I see going on. I expect the test to be up and running in about 3 or 4 months. As I say, I've got Gwinnett County Police and Gwinnett County Sheriff and Cobb County Police, several agencies involved, but I want to make sure I have a diverse sample and a large sample to know that the validation is what it needs to be. Is there any questions you'd like to ask me, sir?
Doctor, as you develop the test, this is Colin Ake, I'm on council. As you develop the test, what's the process to, is there an experiment process there where you've got a control group and you're weighing the results against some balance? What's that process?
Well,
like?
what has to happen with this test, you're trying to measure what's called predictive validity. Tests measure, we have what they call three types of validity: content validity, which the test reflects what you're asking; concurrent validity, which is in the moment, does it measure what you want to measure? And then does it in fact predict how officers might behave in the future? What I'm doing is I'm looking at demographic data, for example. But what I'm doing right now is, of the 445 items that I'm currently testing, I'm going to see which ones definitely show a trend or a sequencing of it, so that I can see that certain characteristics and all those traits tend to show people get promoted, who tend to stay longer, who don't tend to get in legal trouble, and see if it predicts those kind of things based on the instrument. As a control group going in this situation, to find a group of control officers, I'd have to measure that against officers who were there, but that'd be very difficult in this type of a study.
Thank you.
Hello?
Anybody else have any questions? All right. Thank you, Doctor. We appreciate your time and your knowledge.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. Sorry there was a confusion at the beginning. I got my iPad working finally. Thank you, sir. You all have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving down to item 6-1 is Smith Douglas Homes sign waiver. Dakota.
Yes, good evening, everyone. We have actually received a request from the applicant to table this sign waiver to a later date. They are looking at some other options and trying to determine if they're going to be able to agree on a sign that would not have to get a waiver. They're trying to look into that more right now, and so they wanted some time to get that together. We did look at some future dates that this would be able to go on, and we're looking at July 20th as the next available date for this.
All right, then if that's the case, I'll entertain a motion to table to the July 21.
You have a motion?
You have a second?
We have a motion and a second by Tracy. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, Ward 1. 2.
Aye.
3.
Aye.
4.
Aye.
5.
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. 6-2 is the public hearing and first reading for LDO Chapter 9, the Tree Preservation Standards Text Amendments, and that's Jake.
Hey everybody, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. All right, so changing some things in Chapter 9, these changes are intended to provide some updates to address issues with private property trees, the issuance of tree removal permits, correcting an error that we had left in on a previous revision, and completely overhauling the required inspections and recommended tree species list. Next slide, please. This first one is adding a written exception to the limitation of tree removal on a single-family residential outside of LDP only. This would allow them to remove additional trees that were in excess of the 5 trees that may be hazardous trees, but it also would provide clarification. It provides clarification that city staff is not to be the one responsible for making those determinations of the tree health or the conditions of the tree. So if it was required, if we can't adequately assess the condition of the tree, then the property owner has to provide a letter stating the condition of the tree from a certified arborist, and then we could add to those 5 that are allowed by the ordinance already. Next slide, please. This one was a question that came up, and it needed to be added as a specific definition. it was spelled out in the ordinance what a protected tree was, but now it's clearly defined as any tree larger than 3 inches diameter at breast height that does not meet the criteria of a specimen tree as described in section 9.302. Next slide, please. This is the error we left in. We had left in a sentence that said that no credit was allowed for shrubs or trees with impact to their critical root zone. Administrative variances for encroachment to root zone should not be considered. We had previously changed to allow for critical root zone encroachment up to 20%. So we needed to remove this line. The last note there, administrative variances for encroachment, needed to be moved to the new addition we had made. So I added that to the last part of there and saying administrative variance request to increase this encroachment shall not be considered, just to kind of emphasize what our intention is with that. Next slide, please. This part had a little reworking from this. So the intent of requiring an as-built was to directly have developers put onto a plan what it was that their plantings ended up being, because a lot of times it is not nearly what the site plan had intended, but what they have planted may still meet the requirements of the ordinance. And so it's becoming increasingly difficult to close out subdivisions and get them turned over to HOAs because the plantings would not match the approved site plan. And we spent a lot of time trying to address what's installed and its condition and how that compared to the approved site plan, where if we had just them to go out with a landscape architect or an arborist and show the exact conditions to us, then we could compare that to the site plan. And if they needed to make additions based on what their as-builts were, we could address it that way instead of trying to make them revise a site plan that is maybe 2 or 3 years old, 3 or 4 years old. So the original language was that the city arborist at any time may at their discretion require an as-built. When we sent this to Eldon, there was some question about using that language as at their discretion. So our proposal, Brantley and I, if you go to the next slide, is to change it to this so that it's more specific about which developments we were aiming this at hoping and getting some help in. So all residential developments with recorded covenants shall provide to the city arborist an as-built tree plan, which graphically communicates the size, location, name, and conditions of all trees and landscape material existing on the site. The plan must be to scale and prepared by a certified arborist or registered landscape architect. The as-built tree plan must be reviewed and approved by the city arborist prior to the conveyance to the homeowners association from the declarant to a homeowner's board of directors. I believe Brantley mentioned maybe that Eldon had some further input on this. Eldon? No.
Hold on, we're going to unmute him.
Okay, I've got it on unmute. I haven't had a chance to talk to Brantley about this. I left Brantley a message that I wanted to talk to him about it. I think we can go ahead and have the first reading, but I still need to get with Brantley and discuss it because I just need some explanation of what you're trying to get to.
Okay.
And we may have to have a third reading.
Okay. All right, then next slide, please. There's so I propose also eliminating the entire inspection section as it's currently written. It's not very detailed at all. It's about which inspections are done and which ones are required. So this clearly lays out the 3 inspections that are expected. Initial submittal of development plans would initiate an inspection where I would check those conditions. After they were permitted, then those tree protection, fencing, encroachment limits, all those should be established. That would be another inspection. And then before issuance of final CO, another inspection for the complete compliance. These are already being done. It's just that this spells it out clear for developers, and these would be notes that would be included on site plans. So next slide, please. I've removed the existing tree species list and combined parking lot sections and relettering. The tree species list was very difficult if you ever looked at it as what the approved species were, because it would show flowering type and color and a bunch of things that were important, but not necessarily important for landscape architects and arborists who may already know those things about trees. So that extensive tree list will still be maintained and available on our website for individuals looking to plant trees that Woodstock has approved and want a very detailed information about each tree. But the new one is much easier to read and very clearly outlined where we're allowing these trees to be placed, so that's more important, I think, for site plan. Another change that we want to make coming up is including the tree species list into the council policy manual and maybe removing it from the ordinance, but referencing to the council policy manual, so it would be easier to add trees to that list. That's not currently the case. We just want to remove the existing one and replace it with this new one that's listed in the final ordinance. But that's all I've got for this.
All right. Any questions for Jake?
Jake,
right.
from a I got a number of thoughts on this. I guess my first question is, do we have a second reading on this that we're gonna need to do, right?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I'm running into some issues with the trees that are in my front yard that I know were approved, part of the road frontage, yard package that was approved by the city. So I guess one of the questions that I have is the implications of requiring an as-built review of trees prior to the closeout of the neighborhood and the turnover to the HOA, because a lot of these neighborhoods, especially neighborhoods that get mothballed during a recession and then spun back up, I mean, that can be a period of time of 4 or 5 years between a house being built and then it being turned over to the HOA. So if there's a reason, and there are plenty of reasons, whether that is encroachment on a sidewalk, I've got sidewalk separation starting to happen with mine, encroachment on the sewer lines, there are reasons to get rid of trees that are in front yards and replace them with different types. And there's a bunch of lists of types that are reasonable, but I'm just trying to understand what's the process there. If a private property owner goes through the process with the HOA and with the builder, says we need to remove this because there's a reason, and replace it with a different type of tree, it feels like it makes it more difficult for someone to do that if they need to do that, to require that as-built review before turning it over to the HOA.
I don't think maybe the intent really for the as-built is not targeting to locking the neighborhood as it is and this is how it's going to stay as far as the species of the tree. The real intent was to put developers on notice about conditions of trees, because the intent was that a landscape architect or an arborist is not going to go through and on an as-built write a significant dieback on this tree, or this tree's dead, or
sure.
So and what we're finding is when we go to close out a neighborhood, I'm showing them trees that have been there for maybe a year that have significant dieback, or they were planted incorrectly, or they still have the wire from being balled and barreled. So that's what we're having an issue with, and I would hope that that's what that's addressing. But truthfully, it is putting everything that is the existing site conditions at that time onto a plan that's easier to read and easier for developer and the city to make an agreement about what it needs to look like and why it's not in compliance with the code, and where there are huge differences between it and the site plan. If it comes down to a private, after that's, I mean, even in the middle of the process, if a private property owner already has existing control of those trees, that's not something that should have been counted towards density anyway on the site plan. The ordinance even speaks to that and says that developers aren't to locate trees that are planted for site density on private property. that are on lots that are to be private property. So it's supposed
Yeah.
to be located in common HOA common areas and buffers. So that's really what I'm looking for. Not some unless there's a specific.
So this would not require them to do a review of each lot and ensure that the trees that were planted are the same species.
Correct. And that's I'm looking.
I misunderstood. I apologize.
Yeah, I'm honestly looking for HOA common area that's required for planting density, and that those trees that are not out of control of the homeowners, out of control of the homeowners, that we have some way to draw that back in towards the site plan or towards compliance with the code.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Cool. All right, good.
Anybody else? All right, I'll open up the public hearing portion of this agenda item. Rhonda?
Yes, sir. There's no one signed up to speak.
All right, close the public hearing portion. Open up for discussion and or motions. This is a first reading. According to Eldon, we'll need 2 more.
You have a motion to approve?
Second.
We have a David motion and a Tracy second.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call vote, Ward 1. 2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Jake. Good job.
Thank you, sir.
Item 6-3 is the award of the bid and contract for RFP 2020-15 residential solid waste collection and recycling services.
Mayor, we had received notice from Waste Management that they were not going to extend exercise the 1 year, first of 2 1-year options they had in October. So we put it back out for bid. They were also the low bidder this time by a significant amount. So recommendation of the committee who reviewed was to award the contract that's attached to Waste Management. And we'd also like request that if you approve that, the motion also include authorizing the mayor to execute the attached contract.
Any questions? All right, I'll need a motion and or discussion.
Motion to approve waste management contract with the authorization for the mayor to sign the contract.
Second.
And we had a Rob second. Any further discussion?
One question, Mayor.
Yes.
It looks as if they're going to start recycling glass again. Jeff, do you know if that's correct?
I am not, I have not been made aware of that, but I will confirm and report back to you.
Okay, they had a graphic in there that showed the list of what to recycle, what not to recycle. For example, glass, broken down cardboard to recycle, don't recycle, food waste and things like that. So it's either an old graphic or hopefully they're returning to collecting glass.
Well, my guess is it's an old graphic, but I would tell you that Michael Holbrook from Waste Management is online as an attendee. If you want to ask him directly, he should be able to answer that and clear it up.
There he is. Got it. There. Okay, Michael, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. And thank you for having me. And yes, at this time, we're going to check into that. We're not taking glass. It's really subject to the availability of the local MRFs. But I can check back on that first thing in the morning and follow up with Mr. Moon if that would be acceptable.
Sure, that'll be fine. I was just curious. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, sir.
All right, if there are any other questions? Having heard none, I would need a motion.
We made a motion, Donnie.
You already had a motion and a second.
We were in discussion phase, thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 6-4 is the Emery and Garrett GZA groundwater exploration change order. Rob Hogan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Item 6-4 on the agenda is a change order for the groundwater exploration contract with Emery and Garrett GZA. This is a standard procedure because the original contract cannot anticipate exactly how many and the location of our drilling prospects. And we have now decided upon 4 locations, and this particular change order and amendment to contract identifies the exact cost of those 4 sites. We recommend approval. Any questions?
All right. Having heard none, I'll entertain a motion.
You'll have a motion to approve.
Second.
Brian, second.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, Ward 1, 2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 6-5 is the Arcadis Work Authorization 20 Amendment 1. Rob, again.
Mayor, I'm going to recuse myself from the next 2 agenda items. I'm going to log out of the meeting and Mr. Moon will text me when it's time to come back.
All right, thank you, Warren.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. Item 6-5 on the agenda tonight is a amendment to Work Authorization 20 for Arcadis, which is the on-call services. This minor amendment adds some dollar in the contract that will allow us to get to our next work authorization for on-call services that should be in front of council at the July 13th meeting or the meeting after that. And staff recommends approval of this amendment. Any questions?
All right, having heard none, we'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a Colin motion and a Rob second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, Ward 2.
Approve.
Ward 3.
Aye.
4.
Aye.
5.
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Item 6-6 is the Arcadis Work Authorization 23 for East Road, Brentwood to.
Yes, sir. Mayor and Council, item 6-6 is a new work authorization for Arcadis. This is the extensive survey work that will be necessary between Brentwood and Arnold Mill Road so that the information is available to the engineers to begin the engineered design portion of the Nice Road changes. This was also mentioned in the budget presentation a few minutes ago as well. Staff recommends approval of this new work authorization, and I open up for questions.
Any questions for Rob? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
You have a motion to approve.
I heard of Rob. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, David second. Further discussion? Roll call vote, Ward 2.
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. We'll pause a moment till Warren comes back on. Thank you, Rob Hogan.
It should be just a minute. I'd let him know, Mayor.
That's fine.
He's back.
All right, Warren. You there?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay, thank you. Moving down to item 8 under minutes approval, we have the minutes from the 2020 retreat. Are there any changes or corrections needed? Having heard none, I'll entertain a motion.
Give a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a Colin and a Tracy. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, Ward 1.
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 8-2, minutes from the May 18th, 2020 regular council meeting. Are there any changes or corrections needed? Entertain a motion.
You have a motion to approve?
Second.
Was that a Brian second?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Ward 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Under comments, I don't have anything. Does any council member have anything? Oh, I do have something. I will be leaving town on Friday, be gone for a week, but I will be available by email and phone. Any council member have anything?
Mayor, I had something I was gonna talk about earlier, or bring up earlier, but I didn't get to see the opportunity to jump in, so I figured I'd jump in now. Chief Moss, are you in the chambers there? Chief and I were having a discussion today in the light of some of the discussions that have been going on around the nation regarding ensuring that departments aren't hiring officers that have maybe resigned under use of force or investigation of use of force at previous departments. And I thought he was sharing with me some of the process that they have in place to ensure that we don't hire someone here in Woodstock that might have fit those requirements. I just thought I'd ask him about that and see if he could share with everyone what he shared with me.
Thank you, council member. And if I can apologize to all the mayor and council for the confusion earlier with trying to get Dr. Sampson lined up on the technology front, but I'm glad we were finally able to get him dialed in. Yes, sir. So the question, speaking to previous law enforcement experience, first, we have a comprehensive background process that we conduct on every potential applicant to determine if their suitability for a career in law enforcement, and specifically here in Woodstock. Someone who is a current or previously certified police officer here in the state of Georgia or outside the state, we will check with their previous employers, particularly in Georgia. We'll check with the Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training Council. We will, as a part of this background investigation, determine what their status has been at previous agencies, whether or not there have been any post-related sanctions, meaning that the post council found wrongdoing on their behalf at some point in the past, under what circumstances they left, or that their agency reported that they had left, whether that was a voluntary resignation, whether they left while under investigation, so a resignation while under investigation, or if they were terminated. Obviously, problems in those areas would make the applicant ineligible. So yes, sir, we take very seriously anyone who is, all of our applicants we take seriously, but particularly those who have previous experience in law enforcement. We look very closely at how they performed at previous agencies and under what circumstances they left.
Thanks, Chief. I appreciate that. And thank you to you and your staff for what y'all are doing and the work you're doing to ensure freedom of speech is treated well here in Woodstock and keep everyone safe.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else?
I'd like to pile on to that. I really appreciate the hard work that everybody's doing. Police and the entire staff, have been setting up and taking care of the city for quite a while now. And it's an impressive bunch of people we have, and I'm very proud to be part of it.
Very good. Anyone? All right, I'll turn it over to our city manager.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I would add one thing to the chief's response to Councilmember Ake. I do think that that is an area where there is a lot of opportunity for improvement, probably across the state and the nation, because I'm thinking of some specific examples, which I'm not going to name, that, you know, folks who had issues who are still in law enforcement at different agencies. And I'm not convinced that every agency in the state goes to the lengths that we do to look at applicants who are already certified leaving other agencies. And I do think that's an area that can be greatly improved. So I just wanted to throw that in. Mayor, I don't have anything else to report. Appreciate the comments. We do have a great staff, and I'm very proud of how they have performed always, but especially over the last couple of weeks in some sometimes difficult circumstances. I would like to request an executive session by way of explanation for the public. The way that will work is this meeting will be left open. Council and a few others will be logging out of this meeting and logging into a separate meeting for the executive session. Once that is over, they will be coming back into this meeting that we're currently on, this session. We will not be asking council to take any action tonight. So the only action that would be taken would be to adjourn the meeting. But that's procedurally how it would work. But I do need to request the executive session.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss real estate litigation and personnel.
You have a motion to go in executive session.
Second.
That's a David motion and a Rob second.
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Ward 1.
Aye.
2.
Aye.
3.
Aye.
4.
Aye.
5.
Aye.
6.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. You know the drill. Log off and then log in.